What's up, everybody? I'm Reverend Nia.
I'm Minister Wallace.
My name is Reverend Tiff, and welcome to Millennial Conversations.
Millennial Conversations is a Bible study specifically for young adults where we teach through dialogue and have candid conversations from an emerging generation of leaders.
Be sure to repost and share with the hashtag RTMC. That means Read Temple Millennial Conversations. And don't forget to engage with us in the chat.
You can tune in to our Read Temple website, Facebook page, and YouTube channel every Thursday at 7 p.m. So grab your pens,
grab your notebooks,
and join us for tonight's rap session. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another Millennial Conversations. Listen, due to the convening of the 72nd Annual Washington Annual Conference next week, we will not have Millennial Conversations for the first Thursday in May, but May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so for this last Thursday in April, we're going to go ahead and jumpstart mental health awareness, and tonight we're talking about being an overcomer, and we are specifically talking with Black men about mental health. I know it's definitely not according to the status quo to do so, but when have we ever done anything according to the status quo? And so on tonight, I have two of my brother beloved on with us tonight, and they're going to introduce themselves at this time.
Thank you, my Reverend Sister. Brittany Castine here, pastor of Mount Pisgah AME Church in Jersey City, New Jersey, and the principal and CEO of Imagine Greater Strategic Consulting Group. So thank you for this time today, and I look forward to our conversation.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Reverend DIllard, for inviting me, and to my brother, Pastor Castine. Honored to be with you, sir. I am Reverend Joseph T. Howard Sr. I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland. I currently reside in Atlanta, Georgia, where I serve as the interim youth coordinator at Mount Ephraim Baptist Church, as well as the youth pastor at Mount Olivet Missionary Baptist Church. And I'm also the program coordinator for the Academy of Preachers. And it's my honor and my privilege to be here with each of you this evening, and I look forward to a great discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you both for being on with us, and we're just going to jump right in. It is Mental Health Awareness Month, or next month it will be Mental Health Awareness, and it's no secret that when it comes to the Black community, but specifically men, mental health is not something that's ordinarily talked about or targeted, and there's a stigma that surrounds it. So let's talk about why we think that is. And Brittany, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. I mean, listen, there is this notion that, men hold things in, we have to be men, we have to handle it ourselves. This idea of not bringing our problems to anybody else or not overburdening anybody else with our stuff and with our issues. And so a lot of men, particularly Black men, right, carry around internally these burdens from life, these burdens from work and career and family, that in turn has a toll on their mental health, which, really breeds a cycle, right, that is unhelpful for a lot of the places and spaces where we show up as men. I think so. One of the biggest myths, one of the biggest challenges is this notion of manliness being thought of as a way to keep your business to yourself and handle everything yourself. And just not to worry about it, right? And so, I think that is one of the number one reasons that we have a stigma with mental health in the male community, for sure.
And I would say I totally agree with everything that Brittany just said. I would also add that a lot of men look for a safe space. And unfortunately, it is difficult for a lot of us to trust anyone. A lot of us have a difficult time finding a safe space, especially if you were raised like I was, where when you try to express yourself, and this is as a boy, you try to express yourself and your feelings and you get told, man up, or keep it to yourself, or, you're supposed to be a man, so, get over it. Eventually, you're programmed to internalize how you feel, and it becomes a way of living. So the concept of mental health or opening to someone or seeking therapy or seeking healing seems foreign, because all you know is keeping it to yourself, because that's what you were programmed to do as a child. So I think that, parents and guardians and those around our boys need to be mindful of what they are, depositing into these boys, because that will carry into them becoming men. And unfortunately, a lot of boys are carrying a lot of unhealthy practices into manhood, and we're seeing the results of it.
Absolutely, man. And listen, as we continue, make sure y'all share, repost, use the hashtag RTMC, also the hashtag Overcomer. Tag all your Black young adult male friends in the chat right there, wherever you're watching from. And also be advised, I know I'm not a mental health professional. These men are not claiming to be either. What is being shared in this space on tonight is just their stories. The Bible tells us that we're overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the words of our testimonies. And therefore, their testimonies on tonight is what we're praying will be of encouragement for you all, and hopefully may even break some chains for you all, and then maybe produce or start the journey for your healing for somebody that may be tuning in on tonight. And so let's talk a little bit more about not necessarily the Black male stigma, but maybe just you as individual Black men, some of the things that you might have wrestled with or may even be currently wrestling with as you are comfortable with sharing as it relates to different things regarding mental health. Brittany?
Sure. Listen, one of the things that really put me in a tough space is the fact that I went through a divorce, and it is multi-layered, that particular issue, right? First of all, I'm a pastor, I'm a preacher. We don't have those kind of problems, right? Another piece of it is that divorce is not a commonplace within my family group, while it is in my ex-wife's family group. It is not common at all. And to a degree, I'm that golden boy in my family, right? And so, it wasn't expected. It was a really strange time, really strange place. And in so many ways, it happened. The actual proceedings happened during the COVID-19 pandemic. So on one end, I was able to sort of hide from it, right? So the not seeing around, that whole thing, I was able to benefit from that because of lockdowns and just kind of like not wanting to be around folks. But on the other end of it, I had to go through a lot of that without sort of different outlets of social circles gathering and all of that. And so, that was an incredibly weird, low moment, I think, but one of the ways that I was able to sort of process that and move up and forward to this point is that I had a lot of different types of help around me and that I employed. First of all, I worked with a licensed clinical psychologist. I had a Christian counselor as well. I had a pastor on another end. I had a friend who also affirmed me sort of in everything that I did. And then I had another friend who told me about myself and really kind of spanked me a little bit to make sure that I got myself together. But I think one of the reasons why I did not go into a really, really dark place or any self-destructive pieces is because, before getting there, I knew the importance of tapping into some resources and making sure that I'm able to shake back the right way and kind of restore, some things in my life and deal with some things in my life to where I'm able to be a little bit better, right? And so, it's still a process. You have your moment. I moved on now. I've well moved on. Praise the Lord. I've moved on. Praise his name. I've moved on. I want the world to know I've moved on. But
say it again, Reverend.
Yeah, I moved on. but there are certain things, there are certain times when it really hits you. It hits, we live in social media, right? And so just last week, I went to, my memories popped up, and it was memories of when I proposed and memories when this happened. So, you have these different triggers, you have these different moments, you have awkwardness when you see people who want to talk about it, but don't want to talk about it, but don't know what to say, don't know how to deal with it, right? And kind of talk and dance around things. So you have those moments, but a lot of those same resources that helped me get through the darkest periods are some of the same resources that I tap into to fuel me even now, so that I can, present the best version of myself to my world, to my family, to my current girlfriend, to, my congregation, to my business, as a means to be good.
We caught that. Current girlfriend, come through.
She's over she's on this side right there. She's boom, right there. Boop, boop.
Joe, what about you, my man?
Well, for me, there are a number of layers to my story that have put me in a position where seeking help was mandatory. Like, it was essential. Like, I had no other way to cope in a healthy manner. So first and foremost, I was born, I'm 33 years old. I was born in 1988. I was adopted at 6 weeks old. My biological mother was not able to raise me. My biological father was nowhere in the picture. So I was raised an only child. My parents that adopted me are the only parents I've ever known. And so I was raised with that stereotype of being an adopted child, because unfortunately there's a lot of, assumptions made about us. And then being an only child, there's also assumptions made about us as well. And so growing up, I was living with an abandonment narrative. I was asking myself, why didn't she want me? Why didn't she raise me? Like, why did she keep my older brother? Because, I have an older brother that's a year older than me. And so she was expecting to have him, even though she was whatever, but I was kind of a surprise. And so naturally, it's just kind of the mindset of, well, she wanted him, but she didn't want me. And then my parents had limited information. So what they did tell me gave me the impression that I wasn't wanted. And so I was growing up asking, did she ever hold me? Did she ever love me? Did she ever care? Did she ever want to find me? All of those things that you typically ask. And so, those feelings do a number on your confidence and your sense of identity and value. And so for the longest time, I hated myself. I didn't believe that I was worthy of love and kindness. I put up with pretty much anything. I was desperate for people to like me. And on top of that, I was also born with a learning disability. And so early in my life, all I was told was what was wrong with me. You need extra time to complete assignments. You're probably going to be a problem child. You need to be institutionalized. Like I had an IEP. I spent 7 years in a therapeutic school to kind of get me back together. But during that time, again, all I was hearing was what was wrong with me, essentially. So I wasn't hearing so much what I was doing well. And that really wounded me. That really hurt me. Just all of these things, adopted, given up for adoption, learning disability, only child, like all of these things. And so, but I didn't realize how hurt I truly was until I got married. And truthfully speaking, and Brittany can probably speak to this, marriage forces you to grow up, but it also forces you to face wounds that you didn't know you had. Marriage is almost like that water that lets you know how many paper cuts you got. And so, and I had a whole lot of paper cuts that I wasn't aware of, and a lot of them went deep. And so it eventually got to the point where it's like, I want to be well for myself. I want to be well for my wife. And I want to be well for our children when we have them. And of course, now I have 2 children. I have a 2-year-old that's about to be 3, and we just had our son, Joseph Jr., which is why I'm Joseph Sr. at the end of January. He's about to be 3 months. And so, and I have seen the cycles when parents don't get themselves together. In fact, there was a TikTok video I saw where this young lady was responding to criticism from older people about, why do you have a therapist? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And she's like, you keep asking, why did we go to therapy? Here's the answer: because you didn't go. And truthfully speaking, that's why a lot of us young people are in therapy, because we're raised by wounded individuals who didn't seek out the help that they needed. We have those toxic practices passed along to us. And while my parents that raised me did the best that they could, and I love and appreciate them, they were both wounded. And I saw a lot of dysfunction. They passed off a lot of those toxic behaviors to me. There were certain things that they said and did that didn't help me in the state of mind that I was in, already feeling abandoned, already feeling unworthy of love, etc. And so all of that to say, I'm at a point now where it's like mental health is needed for survival. Like, it's not a thing of, I'll get to it when I get to it. To me, that's up there with handling my responsibilities as a husband and a father, which the way I was raised, that's not optional. If you have a wife, you handle your responsibilities. If you have children, you handle your responsibilities. So with mental health, if you've got wounds or issues, you go get that help. Because not only do you need to be well for yourself, but as Brittany said, you want to be your best self to those that you are responsible to and for. So, your family, your church, your friends, whomever. And so at 33, I thank God that I've come a long way, but I'm still healing. I'm still working, and I'm very transparent about that. I have a long way to go. I mentioned about my biological mother, and Reverend Dillard knows this. Last year, I set a goal to find her. And so I sent my DNA off to Ancestry DNA, and I found her. I found my birth mother. I found my biological brother. I found out that I have 2 younger brothers, which I didn't know. I always knew I had an older brother, but now I know I'm the second of 4 boys because she got married and had 2 more children. And last year I got to meet her in person. I got to meet my brother. I got to hug my mother. I found out that she did love me all the time. Like, I found out that it hurt her to have to give me up, but she just knew that she couldn't raise me. And so while I thought I was just abandoned and thrown away, I was basically like Moses. My mother just sent me down the river and hoped for the best because she couldn't take care of me herself. And so, it's like, that's just a narrative shift. But that's one thing I've learned in this whole mental health journey, is that narratives matter. And we as Black men, we as humans need to take control of our narratives, because every familiar narrative is not true or healthy. Because a lot of us are following narratives that we're used to, that we're accustomed to. They get us attention, they get us sympathy, because let's be real, right? There's some folks that love the attention that wounds come with, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, if the narrative is not factual and the narrative is not healthy, then it is not doing you any good. So I'm still on the battlefield. I'm still working and healing and, journeying through this, but I wouldn't be where I am or even be in a healthy space to have this conversation if it wasn't for my therapist and the work that I've been able to do with mental health.
And so it's interesting you say that, because, particularly the last part of what you were discussing around, loving the attention and the narrative shifts. Based on what I experienced, I didn't want any attention at all, right? I desired to stay under the radar. I mean, even to my family, I have never, even to this day, uttered the words, "I am divorced," or "I'm getting a divorce." They sort of found out as they found out, right? I mean, because I was able to live with it, but I was never able to really speak it. Now, out of necessity and fairness, I spoke it to my congregation where I was, and even where I am now. But I didn't want to come to terms with that reality in just speaking. I was fine with moving on, but I couldn't apply that label to myself, because I didn't want that attention, and I didn't want to deal with that narrative. And then on the narrative piece, I struggled because, and my therapist and all really helped me see this, right? So I really wanted to put the story out as for how I ended up in this place. This is not my doing. This is where we are. This is what happened. Whatever. But like at the end of the day, they were trying to help me understand it really doesn't matter, and it doesn't really help you at all to kind of relitigate some of those things, in the past, in a relationship that is completely dissolved, friendly, right? Friendly. I love her. We still good, but on the romantic side, completely dissolved, completely moved on, right? All of that, because I desired to be in control of the narrative. Because that's important, right? Even Jesus said, "Who do men say that I am?" So that was a narrative question. And then who do you say that I am? That's a narrative question. But, really working with a lot of different people, they will help you to at least get the narrative right with yourself, so that you can look in the mirror and be sure about who you are, be able to embrace your experiences, your mountaintops and your valleys, and then get to a place where you just move on and begin that journey towards wholeness. And I really encourage, it has, pandemic has been tough, just life has been tough for millennials, for a lot of different people, right? I just really encourage people to take your mental health very, very seriously and go through some different mental hygiene things that help you to be in the best space for yourself and for others. Like for me, it was a combination of a few things. I told you about the therapist and all those people, right? But it was also like, for me, I like trips, and I like road trips. And so,
same here, man. Yeah.
I drive a place, book a hotel, book an Airbnb or whatever, and just be in a place, do nothing, right? But just be in a different place for a few days. I drove up to Hot Springs, Arkansas. I drove over to the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. I drove over to Dallas. I connected with some friends who I should have been keeping up with in a better way anyway, right? You know what I'm saying? Just as a way of changing my environment and giving myself something different to look at. some different kind of air to breathe, some different food to eat, some different vibes to be a part of. So I traveled a little bit. Ironically, that season was the best season of ministry that I had, because I was not dividing myself up between home and church and this place and that place. I poured out everything I had to the church, and the church was fruitful because of it, because I was very intentional about not bleeding my issues upon the church. And so I gave them the very best that I had. And they're still benefiting from that season that I had my own internal struggles, but it manifested itself in something beautiful publicly and by way of ministry. I spent a lot of time writing. You know, I wrote some really great things in a journal, a book that I need to go and finish up and put some bows on some of the illustration and all of that. And it just was, you know, it was just a time for me to really invest in myself and some of the things that I want for me, some of the things that I think are important for me in my right now as well as in my future. And so, you know, mental health hygiene is important. I was cutting my phone off for a season and getting into bed at night, and you know, and going to the gym, or at least running, to try to make sure that I got my blood flowing right and all of that kind of stuff. So and it's different for everybody, right? I think we should love ourselves so much to where we are willing to take the time out to figure out what it is that we like and to figure out what makes us tick. And so that helped me in my journey for sure.
And I actually want to piggyback up on something you said about bleeding on the congregation. That is very something that we have to be very careful of, especially when we're working through mental health, because a lot of people can turn the pulpit or the preaching moment into their personal soapbox. And I've seen it happen. I've been tempted to do it myself. And I've had to ask myself each time I preach, is this God speaking through me, or is this Joseph right now? Like, is this a rhema word that God has for the house? Or is this Joseph's wounds being projected on this congregation that have no earthly idea what's going on? And so I think that we need to understand the balance as well as the difference between bleeding and transparency, because I do think transparency is an effective form of ministry, because it helps people realize, hey, I'm not the only one struggling. You know, my pastor can sympathize. My pastor knows what it's like, but we also don't need to get up there and tell all of our business. And I'll say, as a youth pastor, that, you know, I see more and more why I went through some of the struggles I went through, because when my young people say to me, Reverend Howard, nobody likes me, or, you know, my parents don't care about me, or, you know, how come nobody does this or that? And I can say, I hear you. I know how you feel. I understand. Like, I can be sympathetic and empathetic and authentically there, right? Because, you know, some folks just be like, oh yeah, I get it, baby. I understand. And they don't know a thing.
Not a clue.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have a clue. Like, I don't know the first thing about divorce. And so while I hear you and I sympathize for you as a brother, I can't sit there and be like, oh yeah, man, I know how you feel, because I don't have that experience. And somebody who's never been adopted or never given up for adoption or whatever, they can't understand my feelings, or someone that's not an only child, right? So like, each of us have our own experiences, but it's interesting to me how God can take those wounds and those difficult spots and turn them into catalysts for effective ministry. But at the same time, we still need to do the work of healing and making sure that we're well, because some preachers and just ministers fall into the trap of being like, oh, you know, this will get me preaching engagements, this will get me a book, this will get me a conference, but they're still not well. And so our inner wellness is more important than whatever platform our story will take us to. And so, you know, we just got to be mindful of that. Like, I've got testimonies about how God brought me through with my learning disability. And now I'm, you know, ordained, MDiv, you know, preaching 20 years, all of that. But at the same time, it's like, if I'm not well in my mind, then that's counterproductive at the end of the day. And so it's definitely, you know, our wellness should be first and foremost, because if we're not well, then we can't, you know, properly function.
Now, Richard, you started talking about some of the things that you've done, like traveling, road trips, journaling, and yeah, you mentioned those things. So when it comes to other things that you've all employed as it relates to you being overcomers or on the journey to become overcomers, what are some of the other practices or disciplines that you've employed to be where you are now, Joe?
Well, first and foremost, obviously, continuing regularly to talk to my therapist. That's first and foremost. Having standing appointments. And in addition to my wife and I's marital counselor that we still see for our marriage, I have my own therapist for me, and she has her own therapist for her. And so it's like we have those conversations about those inner things, similar to what Whitney was talking about, knowing when to unplug. Self-care is definitely mandatory, and that kind of helps get me in the right headspace. And for me, sometimes that's driving. I love road trips too. Sometimes it's Six Flags because I'm a roller coaster guy. That keeps me, helps me unwind, gets me in the right mindset. Being silly, just laughing. And Reverend Dillard knows that I'm a clown. But while I just like being silly and I look for an excuse to laugh, that also it keeps me well. I enjoy it. And then just, being around people. Like, I'm a people person. I enjoy loving on people. I enjoy being around people. I just enjoy the fellowship and the socialization, which of course, that's one of the reasons COVID was so difficult, because we couldn't be around people. But first and foremost, and this is just a discipline that I've had, being honest about how I feel, like not sweeping things under the rug, communicating, right? And not being ashamed to have feelings. Like if something hurts, being honest, saying ow. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it might not hurt somebody else, but somebody else's tolerance has nothing to do with me. I have my tolerance. I have my, what I'm able to endure and what I'm not. And one of the reasons why I was wounded for so long was because I was like, okay, well, I'm a man, I'm a preacher, I'm this, that, and the third, so I shouldn't be whatever. But it's like, no, this hurts. Like, this hurts. And so just being honest about how I feel, communicating, standing up for myself, realizing that I am worthy and I am deserving. Those are things that I have to tell myself, because after decades of believing the opposite, it really takes a while to shift that narrative, because narratives get comfortable. Captivity gets comfortable, and narratives can be a form of captivity. But a lot of people are in captivity and comfortable because they're so, I guess, under the impression that they'll never get out. It's kind of like prisoners that are in jail for 40, 50, 60 years and they get paroled and they don't want to go anywhere because all they know is those bars.
Right. And much like you were just saying, like, a lot of people get so comfortable in captivity that they don't know how to function in freedom. And so with that, they don't know what freedom looks like, because again, their narrative only speaks through the lens for them through their spaces of being captive. So by the time they actually are in a space of freedom, they don't know what it is. They don't know what it looks like, smells like, feels like, nothing, and therefore don't know how to function in it. So that's real good. Brittany, I saw you felt like everything was bubbling up in your shana now. Go ahead. I see you taking notes.
First of all, Thursday is my sermon preparation day, and so thank y'all for helping me out with my sermon for Sunday, because I've gotten a nice little outline here, and all I need is the celebration, and then y'all have helped me with this entire thing.
Just make sure you quote me and you quote Joe. That's all
look, the first time I preach it, I'm gonna quote you. The next time I'm gonna say somebody told me. But in any instance, man, it's interesting that you talked about laughter, because laughter is a huge part of my theology. For anybody who follows me on social media, laughter is my theology. Laughter is how, in fact, I have helped the people in this new season that I'm in, at this new pastorate that I've been in since November, help them to kind of fall in love and to really connect, right? Because of laughter. It's my coping mechanism, it's my weapon, it's my defense mechanisms. And so, it's certainly been helpful. But in addition, of course, I think it goes without saying, but I had a lot of intentional prayer and fasting during that season, and really talking to God and waiting on God to understand more, not just about God, but more about myself, more about my ministry, more about my right now and my future, and being able to have some time to do nothing but commune with God was very helpful to me in many ways. So even as a preacher, sometimes you take for granted that time with God, because you do get caught up in your routines and you get caught up in all of the different aspects of ministry. And so, I was really able to feed and fuel my soul in a way that was just refreshing, and it is exactly what I needed to do. But on the other side of all those other things, I spent a lot of time cooking, because cooking is very therapeutic. And so I was able to tap into some of the things that, my grandmother, my mother, my father, even some of my friends that we would do. I mean, listen, I'm 3 a.m. I got 4 slabs of ribs on the grill, and it's just
awesome.
And I'm just like, what is this? And so, I got a lot of good friends because I had a lot of food to get rid of, but I mean, it was some healthy ways to sort of have an outlet for sure, because I mean, I learned new skills. I picked up some better habits for myself around diet and exercise and study habits and sleep time and just other relational matters, right? And so, it was helpful to me. I guess it was good that I suffered. Maybe so, maybe not. Don't take that literally, but for sure, for me, right, it was not an all bad season, because I'm stronger now than I was even before I got married. Stronger now than before I accepted my calling into ministry. Stronger now than a lot of other things. And for that, not for all of the in-between stuff for sure, but for that, I'm grateful to God, because only God can use that to make this, right? And so for that I'm very grateful. So I picked up some good habits. I hope to keep the good habits. I hope that I shedded some of my bad habits, and I'm working on them every single day. But even now I do a lot of cooking. When I get in a little funk about something, right, I'll just cook a roast or something like that, strangely enough, but it works for me.
Awesome, man. Listen, guys, this has been so rich, but we are so out of time. But before we go, I do want to ask if Pastor Castine would indeed offer a prayer in this space, specifically for Black men, for millennials, definitely for the dismantling of mental health stigmas, and however else the Lord leads you in the word of prayer at this time.
Certainly. And thank you, Joe. Thank you, Reverend, for your time today and allowing us to be a part of this conversation. Come on, let's look to the Lord. Gracious and loving God, we do pause once again, oh God, before we ask you for anything, just to thank you for everything. And God, we recognize and realize that you are a good God, a holy God, a worthy God. And besides you, there is no other. And so on this day, God, we come asking that you would just be with us in the midst of all of our trials and in the midst of our issues. God, you said in your word that you would give us perfect peace and keep us in perfect peace if we keep our minds stayed and fixed upon you. And God, we ask that you would heal our minds, particularly the minds and the spirits and the souls of Black men, Black millennial men, as many of us face myriad complications and mental health challenges and even stigmas. God, help us to be better. Help us to seek you for wholeness and for healing and for direction and for guidance. God, help us to understand that there are people who love us and people who affirm us and resources that are out there to help us to be better every single step of the way. God, help us to understand that there is no shame in going through what we go through. And there's certainly no shame in getting help that we so desperately need. We thank you, God, even for this space of being able to have this critical conversation. And it's our prayer that through this discussion on today with Reverend Chania and with Reverend Joe and myself, that someone would be blessed and pointed into a direction of helping them to get things back on track again. But God, we rejoice in knowing that everything will not always be like this. God, we know that it won't always be sad all the time, that we won't always have to cry, that we won't always have challenges, because you prepared a place for us where none of these things exist. But until that great day comes, God, we promise that we'll give you all the glory and honor and praise in Jesus's mighty, matchless, and wonderful name. We do submit this prayer, and through the power of the Holy Ghost, we know all things are done. Amen, amen, and amen.
Thank you so much. Listen, guys, if you all are tuning in on tonight and you don't have a relationship with Lord Jesus Christ, you are unsaved, you are unsure if you're saved, or you may not even know what it means to be saved, I invite you on tonight to make a bold faith move and type in the chat, "It's me." It's no condemnation. We've all had to make that decision, and I promise you, it's the best decision you could ever make for your life. And so if that's you on tonight and you're unsaved, unsure, or don't know what it means, I want you to type in the chat, "It's me." Maybe you're already saved, but you don't have a church home where you are growing, where you're not connected to a body of believers that will help keep you up, encouraged, uplifted, and accountable. I know we don't like that word about accountability, but it's so important. And so if you've been worshiping with Reed Temple, you've been worshiping with Mount Pisgah, if you've been worshiping down in Atlanta, and you believe that the Lord is leading you to any of these 3 churches, we invite you to type in the chat, "It's me." We want to make sure that you're connected to a body of believers, regardless of what state you may find yourself living in. And if maybe it's you on tonight that want to recommit or rededicate your life back to Christ. What does that mean? That means you and Jesus had a viable relationship. Y'all didn't get divorced, but y'all broke up. And at the end of the day, you're now saying, "Jesus, I've tried this thing called life independent of you. And now I want to do this thing called life depending upon you." If that's you on tonight and you want to be back in the right relationship with God our Father, won't you make a bold faith move and type in the chat, "It's me." Maybe you haven't grown as bold in your faith just yet as it relates to Reed Temple, but if you haven't grown as bold in your faith just yet, once you head over to www.reedtemple.org/cares, and someone will most certainly be in communication with you and help you at your point of need. Last and certainly not least, if you would like to sow a seed into the life of this ministry, not just Millennial Conversations, but that of Reed Temple AME Church, so that we can continue the work of the Lord in the church as well as in the community, won't you follow the directions that are on your screen at this time, no matter how great, no matter how small, whatever amount the Lord places upon your heart to sow on tonight, we invite you to do that, and to do so with a cheerful heart. Listen, y'all, thank you so much again to Reverend Howard and to Reverend Castine. Listen, you guys are absolutely awesome, absolutely amazing. And our prayer is certainly that God will continue to heal you both, that God will continue to make you whole, that God will continue to lead you into all manner of truth, that God will continue to help you on your Christian journeys, that God will continue to open doors for both of you, that God will continue to make ways for both of you, that God will bless your families, that God will bless your futures, that God will bless your businesses, that God will bless your ministries, that God will literally just blow your minds as you continue to do what it is He's called you to do and to be the upstanding Black men of valor that you both are. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Join us in 2 weeks, the second Thursday of May, as we continue our discussion about mental health matters. Until then, thank you for joining us for another Millennial Conversation.